We'll say good night of Shabbos. We'll say good night of Shabbos. Steve is gonna do our sponsors.
All right, thank you to the following sponsors. Eli Brum is a Mazel Tov on his Hebrew birthday, which was on Tu B'Shvat.
Oh yeah, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov.
Nathan and Beth Adler, in memory of Beth's father, Herschel Goldman, Zvi Ben Kalman.
Shalom Shav and Aliyah.
And thanks to Ezra Gordon for sponsoring in honor of Ari Gordon's Hebrew birthday, which was also on Tu B'Shvat.
Shkoyach to the Gordon. We'll say shkoyach to everyone for their sponsorships. A great zichus, Baruch Hashem, to have the Chevra together. And it's gonna be a good night. It's gonna be a good night for everyone together. Thank you to Steve always for coordinating all of the mashka, all of the meichel. Thank you to all of our sponsors in Halavai. Again, also a special thank you to our annual Talmud Torah sponsor, the Tilsim Mishpacha of Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all the Shir Midrashos this year. Again, it's a yearly sponsorship in the Schus of Besoros Tovos for Am Yisrael. We dedicate our learning in Meretz Hashem and the merit of all of our hostages. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Meretz Hashem, bring them home. B'shalom and b'karov, and the merit of all of our holy soldiers. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu allow them to be successful, b'chol ma'aseh yedeihem, and to come home to their families, b'shalom and b'karov. And I will say with that, let's begin. So we're actually going to do a really profound piece in the Piaget. We're actually almost finished in this. I know, we're gonna. Unfortunately, the Sa'ari Harav. I really love having the shir out here, but I've been told that the acoustics are not great. Could also be because there's a lot of talking. Right? But it's both. All right, it could be that there's a lot of side conversation also, but I will make those latter. I will say, tonight I have a much weaker voice. I'm going to try my best to project, but if everyone could help out, let's Baruch Hashem, let's do this together. So we're going to do a really profound and incredible piece by the Rebbe tonight, and I apologize in advance. We have to stop a few minutes early this evening. I apologize for that, but so we'll do our best. We're actually, amazingly enough, at the tail end of the Sefer. So we only really have maybe 1 or 2 1 year, only about 3 years left until we finish. Right? But Baruch Hashem, we really only have like another shir or two until we get till the end. But this piece over here is really dramatically different, as you're going to see. So we're starting tonight in section Memhei, and the Rebbe writes as follows. He says, "Isa me Baal Shem Tov, Zichrono Livracha." The Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh said the following. He said, "Ala pasuk." Anochi Omeid Bein Hashem Ubeinechem. So we'll say incredible. This is the pasuk by Moshe Rabbeinu by Har Sinai. And Moshe Rabbeinu says to Klal Yisrael, Anochi, I Moshe Rabbeinu am standing Bein Hashem Ubeinechem, between you and between HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Remember again, the way it was supposed to work by Har Sinai is that when Hashem appeared to us, we'll say, if anyone needs, there's still plenty of sheets if anyone else needs. The way it was supposed to work by Har Sinai is that Har Sinai was supposed to be a direct revelation between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. There was no need for any kind of intermediary. It was supposed to be like the height of spiritual intimacy between Hashem and Klal Yisrael. The experience served to be too much for the Jewish people. They weren't able to handle it. So they heard the first of the 10 commandments, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. They heard that from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then after that, really the rest came from Moshe Rabbeinu. So the lashon of the pasuk over here is Anochi Omeid Ben Hashem u'Beinechem. Moshe Rabbeinu says, I'm standing between Hashem and you. Again, I will say at first glance, so all Moshe Rabbeinu is making is he's stating fact. He's stating fact. Klal Yisrael, it was too much for you to receive the Torah directly from Hashem, so I'm going to be the intermediary. Now, I use that word very carefully because remember, in Yiddishkeit, we don't need intermediaries, right? That's the beautiful part. I don't need someone to connect me to God. I have a direct connection. I don't need a rabbi, I don't need a rebbe, I don't need a tzaddik, I don't need a makubal. I don't need anyone to bring me close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I might need people in my life to help open me up to being connected to God. But in terms of establishing the connection, I could do that on my own. That's the most beautiful part about Yiddishkeit. Learned, unlearned, knowledgeable, not knowledgeable, observant, not observant. Wherever you're holding in life, a person has an incredible opportunity to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you could do that all by yourself. So Moshe Rabbeinu is making this statement, and he's saying just a statement. I'm standing between you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Rebbe, look what the Rebbe says. You have to understand something. The beauty of Chassidus, and this is what the Piaget and the Torah says, all the Gedolei Chassidus today is, you have to see the Torah with certain eyes. You have to see the Torah with certain eyes. I'll say, you know what our greatest problem in life is? What's our greatest problem in life? Our greatest problem. Ambivalence. Our greatest problem. Ambivalence, apathy. We see the world with such cynical and jaded eyes, right? Everything is a joke, right? And everything is like a what do they call it? Like a smart aleck comment. Like everything is like doubtful of people's sincerity and this, that. Like, this is what we always do. This is what we always do. It's just, there's a lack of, in general, just like, we don't approach life with a sense of purity. And a lot of times it's for good reason. It's because we've been burnt. It's because we've been taken advantage of. It's because, again, people have really hurt us, backstabbed us. So, when you've been hurt or mistreated or backstabbed enough, you become cynical of people's intentions. And even when someone is nice, you think to yourself, what? What do they want? Right? What do they want? What's your angle? Well, no one's really like that. It's like, what do you want? And the problem is, we don't realize it, that it corrupts our entire ability to see anything. So that I can't see people in the right way, I can't see the world in the right way, I can't see myself in the right way, and I can't even see Torah in the right way. So I could see the words. Sometimes in life you could see something. It's kind of like looking for your keys, right? All of us have had those experiences looking for your keys, and 9 out of 10 times, where are the keys? Where are the keys? Like they're right where you left them, but often like they're right there. They're like literally right there. They're right there. I had this I had like a right. And I'm sorry. All right, you just like all. We just don't see. We often just don't see just the most beautiful and incredible things that are literally right in front of us. And part of the beauty when you see the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov, the most beautiful thing about the Rebbe were his eyes. It's interesting that the Torah describes certain people by their eyes. Right? Who's described by their eyes? The first person described by their eyes is Rachel, Leah Imenu. Right? Torah says that Rachel was very beautiful, but Eine Leah Rakos. So everyone is used to, it says literally Leah's eyes were soft. So everyone, we're used to the approach of Rashi. And Rashi says, what does soft mean? They were swollen because she was crying. Right? Everyone said that Leah is going to marry Esau, but she was so upset by that shidduch that she was always crying. So it's looked at not as a compliment, just the opposite. It's that Rachel was very beautiful, and Leah wasn't so beautiful. But the Sforno says something beautiful. The Sforno says that Eina Leah Rakos means Rachel was beautiful. But Leah had a very unique quality that her sister did not have. She had beautiful eyes. Leah Imenu had beautiful eyes. Who's the next person in Tanakh to be described by their eyes? Amazingly enough, it's Leah's great-great-great-great-great-grandson, David. Young David HaMelech is referred to as Yefeh Einayim. He had beautiful eyes. He had beautiful eyes. What does it mean to have beautiful eyes? Leah Imenu had a very difficult life. But after a certain amount of time, she was able to see perspective in her circumstances. And although her life never turned out the way she thought it was, and it certainly was not a storybook marriage or storybook life, At the end of the day, she was able to see things for what they were. David HaMelech suffered incredibly. I have to always say, David HaMelech had every single problem you could imagine. The only problem David HaMelech didn't have was Parnasa. He was wealthy. He had money. But he had Shalom Bayis problems. He had marriage problems. He lost a child. He had health problems. Right? He had incredible dissension within the Jewish people, internal enemies, external enemies. Every problem you could imagine David HaMelech had. But he had beautiful eyes. Because everything is about the eyes you possess. Everything is about how you see the world and how you see your circumstances. And sometimes the most incredible thing about the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh and the Rebbe's disciples is how they saw the Torah. When the Rebbe looked at a pasuk, what he was able to discern and glean in that pasuk. So watch this. So the Rebbe saw this pasuk, Anochi Omeid Ben Hashem Benechem. So a simple pasuk. Moshe Rabbeinu saying to Klal Yisrael, I am standing between you and Hashem. But the Rebbe says, no, it means something so much deeper. Shaha'anochios shemarge sha'adna bikirbo. So also listen to this. Anochi means me. But Anochi or Anochios means egocentricity. Egocentricity and self-centeredness. Anochios is I-ness, me-ness. All about me. Egocentricity, self-centeredness. When a person lives a life where they're totally focused on themselves, doeg v'rodef rak tzarchei atzmo. All I care about in life is me. All I care about in life is what I need, what I want, what serves my needs. Listen to this. Ze omed umafsik bein Hashem ubeinechem. Egocentricity is the wall between us and God. But the Ribono Shel Olam needs more than anything in order to create a relationship is a sense of selflessness. If a person is selfish, if a person is self-centered, if a person is egocentric, if everything is about Anochi, about me, then the Rebbe says, Anochi, if you live a life of egocentricity, of self-centeredness, just know, Omeid bein Hashem ubeinechem. That is going to be the thing that stands between you and God. I will say, is that not overwhelming? Is that not absolutely overwhelming? You would think, what stands between me and God? Oh, I don't know, sin, right? Avera, lust, desire, all kinds of things. No, that's not it. Everybody sins, right? The only shaila is what you've done in the last 10 minutes, right? Or how frequently you've done it, or what you're going to do tomorrow. All of us we sin today, we're going to sin tomorrow, we're going to sin next year. Hopefully we do tshuva, we try to right ourselves, we're doing differences, not the same sins. All those kinds of, but we're always going to sin. Sin is not the thing that stands between us and God. Egocentricity, self-centeredness, selfishness. When all you think about in life is you, when all I think about in life is me, that's Omeid bein Hashem beinechem. Because think about it, we'll say, the Gemara Masechah Sota says this is why the most damning attribute is gaiva, is arrogance. The Gemara says that when a person is arrogant, there's no room in the world for the two of us. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, there's no room for me in the universe with the Baal Gaiva. Someone's arrogant, that ego takes up all of the room. There's nowhere else to go. There's my favorite, and I think it's going to say everything is my favorite, but this is really my favorite. It's a beautiful Katzker. I've said this a million different times. I'll just say that because it fits in over here. The Mishnah Maseches Avos says that there were 10 miracles that occurred inside of the Beis HaMikdash. One of the miracles was Omdim Tzefuchim Meshtachavim Revachim. When Rabbeinu Yonah says it was Yom Kippur, that on Yom Kippur, when the Jews would gather in the Azar, the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, they would be standing like shoulder to shoulder, packed in like sardines. But when they were mishtachaveh, when they would bow down, there was room for everyone. Room for everyone. And the Rabbeinu Yonah says, what's the pshat of that miracle? And he says, because when they bowed down, everybody did vidui, they did confession. So look, I'm happy to confess my sins to God, but I don't want you to hear my sins. That's between me and God. So there was a miracle. In order to enable everyone to confess, even though when we were standing up, we were shoulder to shoulder, when we bowed down for confession, ultimately, again, everyone had their space. Everyone had their space. But the Katzker says something amazing. So I can have a little bit of that seltzer. The Katzker says, thank you. I'm going to open it. Thank you. The Katzker says something amazing. The Katzker says, it means like this. Omdim tzefufim. There are some people who are always omdim. They always stand their ground. There are some people in this world, they always have to be right. It always has to go their way. And if you're the kind of person that has to go, always be right, just understand, tzivufim, there's no room for anyone else in life. There's no room. There's no room. We'll say, we know this. Some of us are that person, and some of us know that person. And again, if you are the person, often we're not aware. But if you know the person, have you ever been in a room, a person like that, they suck all the oxygen out of the room. There's no room to breathe. There's no room to breathe. And all I want to do is get away from people like that, because there's no conversation, there's no discussion, there's no ability to move anywhere. So this is the way it has to be. This is the way okay, it has to be your way, and you're never willing to yield. There's no room for anyone else. Conversely, mishtachavim, if you bow, if you yield, if you compromise, if you recognize that 9 out of 10 times it is not worth the fight, just go ahead. The Sfas Emes says the difference between adults and children is that children value being happy over being right, and adults value being right over being happy. So that's Sfas Emes says you have to make a choice. You want to be right or you want to be happy. And if you're mishtachava, if you're willing to yield, because 9 out of 10 times, there are times you have to stand your ground. 9 out of 10 times, just not worth it. Just not worth it. Then you'll be happy. And I will say, but we get so often caught up in the anochius. I need it to be the way I want it. I need it to be how I want it. I need it to be. I will say, I'll tell you, I've learned a lot about this. And I'll leave it for a different time. Anyway, different time. Different time. In any event, so the Rebbe says, this is the pshat of Anochi omeid bein Hashem ubeinechem. Anochios, egocentricity, self-centeredness, selfishness is what stands between you and God. If it's got to be your way, no room for anyone else, even God. Because what happens if God wants it to be a different way? Right? What happens if God has a difference of opinion? What happens if God needs you to do things differently? Well, no, if it's all about you, it's all about your Anochi, there's no room for you, there's no room, that's the blockade, the blockage between myself and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Aval. This is what the Rebbe says. Amen. Aval. Levatos Hanochius Shala Adam. So how do you stop this? So I'll say, let's say I am a person like this. Let's say I'm a selfish person. I will say, it's important to understand people are inherently selfish. This is very important to understand. We are our default setting, right? Like you could set your phone back to factory settings. If you set us to factory settings, we are selfish. We spoke about this. I think we spoke about this last week, right? That's why, we spoke about this. Our strongest instinct is self-preservation. That's because my life comes before anything else. So our factory setting is to be selfish. That's our factory setting. So how do I change that? How do I change that? How do I transcend that? How do I overcome that? Good Rebbe says. He says the only way to do it is rak bi'ahavas chaverim yecholim. It is only to surround yourself with good friends. Now you'll see what this means in just a moment. Literally, again, with the love of good friends. The love of good friends allows you to transcend your egocentricity and self-centeredness. What does this mean? If you're a loner, if you're all in your, right, you eschew, relationships, and you don't want the chevra, you want to be on your own, chances are you're going to fall into the clutches of egocentricity, self-centeredness, and selfishness. But if you're part of a chevra, loving chevra, committed chevra, you'll be able to transcend it. How so? And he says, V'zeh haremez anochi omeid. So listen to this. The Rebbe says, Kisha anochi omeid liatzmo. When I am by myself, right? When all there is, when all I see in my life is me, and I'm standing by on my own, az zehu bein Hashem beinechem. So that ultimately, again, is what stands between me and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kilomar, chashavnu shema she'ish margia kol kach anochios ba'atzmo ad shebecho chushav shakua lidog rak, the next column, Peishin Pei, rak liatzmo. When a person falls into the clutches of this egocentricity, right? A person falls into the clutches of this, the Rebbe calls this anochios, this selfishness, self-centeredness. Zosi menas chaschus. I have to tell you something. This, I think, is perhaps one of the most incredibly profound insights of the Piagetz. The Rebbe says, why do people become self-centered and selfish? Okay, so you could go with the factory settings idea. But the Rebbe says, what happens in life that makes us selfish? Right? Because on one hand, you could say it's the factory settings, but at the same time, you also see with children, right, an incredible ability to share. Almost like an innate ability to share and to be kind and to want to create relationships. So what happens? The Rebbe says, Kevan, get ready for this. Kevan shenafsho b'pnimiyusa roa eich kol b'nei ha'adam doagim rak li'atzmam margeshes hi es atzma yechida v'galmuda ba'olam. I will say, this is incredible. You know, sometimes we look around the world, and again, what do I see? What do I see when I look around the world? I see every man for himself. Everybody is looking out for themselves. Right? And often, and again, people will be nice. This was last week's share. Right? People will do something nice. They'll do good things. But when do people do good things? When there's something in it for them. That's the way it works. And the truth is, we pick up on this. We pick up on this, and you look around life, and you look around the world, and also, you know, sometimes we learn this because when we're in trouble in a difficult spot, the people I thought who were going to be there weren't there because it just wasn't convenient. They didn't want to. They didn't want to be bothered. Or in a time when people could have really made a tremendous difference, they just absented themselves. So I look around and I realize, you know what? And again, we love all the people all the same, but when I begin to see people are really in it for themselves. That's really the way human nature is. And we'll say, you ever, you know, Rabbi Soloveitchik writes about it. Rabbi Soloveitchik has a book called Lonely Man of Faith. Very, very profound book. And in the introduction to Lonely Man of Faith, he writes that there's a fundamental distinction between being lonely and alone. Right? He says, being alone means there's no one else around you. What else around you? He says, being lonely is an existential state where I just feel by myself, no matter how many other people may be around me. And Rabbi Soloveitchik actually writes in there how although he is perpetually surrounded by talmidim, by students, he always feels a profound sense of loneliness. And I will say, you see this, and especially Rabbi Soloveitchik is writing about this as a Rav, as a leader. Leaders often experience this sense of isolation. Everybody experiences it in different ways. That sometimes when you see that really kind of everyone's your friend as long as you're doing what they want. But the moment you don't do what they want, everyone turns on you in a second. And it's human nature, because everybody's in it for themselves. That's the way it works. But the result of that is I feel so alone. Not necessarily lonely, because there's always plenty of people around, right? But so profoundly alone. You look at his lashon over here, and the margeshes he as atzma, the neshama feels yechida, alone, vigalmuda, forsaken in this world. Umi yidag lema'ana. And then a person is struck by an overwhelming concern and fear. Who is going to look out for me? Everyone else is in it for themselves. Everyone else is looking out for themselves. Everyone is only concerned with their own needs and their own wants. And again, you're right. So when our agendas line up, everything, right? It's kumbaya, everything is fantastic. It's a big kumsitz and a big campfire, and everybody's happy as long as those agendas align. Oh, but once they are not in alignment, oh boy, do the biting tongues come out. And does all the sharpness, and suddenly a person's like, whoa. So I guess I really am alone in this world. And if I am alone in this world, who's looking out for me? And the Rebbe says, therefore, lachein, he omedes al nafsha, umischazekes lidog bishvil atzmusa. So a person comes to a simple realization. Who's looking out for me? Who's looking out for me? Me. There is no one else in this world to look out for me but me. But me. By the way, I just want to point out, and you see this, you know who talks about this all the time? David HaMelech. This is one of the dominant themes in Sefer Tehillim, of David HaMelech feeling constantly let down, forsaken, betrayed, and abandoned by people who he thought had his back. To the point that, remember, David Melch makes the most dramatic statement, Ki avi v'imi v'azavuni. Even my parents have forsaken me. No one has my back. Now, to David HaMelech, to his credit, he recognizes, V'Hashem yasveni. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has my back. The Ribono Shel Olam has me. Right? But the Rebbe says, but in general, the way people deal with this feeling of loneliness, existential loneliness, is they recognize, okay, so no one. My friends are my friends as long as our agendas align. Right? My buddies are my... 99% of people are your friends as long as the friendship works for them. But the moment that the agendas are in disalignment is the moment that everything breaks apart. And as such, says the Rebbe, I recognize the only person to care for me and to look out for me is me. Is me. And therefore he says, Lachim, ki omedes al nafsho mischazekes, lidog b'shlatz musa. So therefore, over time, I have no choice but to think about it, to contemplate, to worry about myself. Ad shela'at la'at mispatach u'mischazek b'kirba min oketzra. So what begins ultimately, again, not necessarily even as a bad thing, right? What begins as this feeling of, I need to look out for me, which by the way, say, by itself, is not necessarily a bad thing. Yeah, you can't outsource your success to other people. And the truth is, the best thing in life to live with is to live with the realization, no one's got your back. No one's got your back. And that is, on one hand, it's a hurtful thing to say, but it's incredibly liberating. Because therefore, when people betray you, which will happen, people stab you in the back, which will happen, you're like, okay, it's not a surprise, because that's what people do, not even in a bad way. Just because they didn't have my back, it wasn't their job, they're looking out for them. They're looking out for them. So when our agendas lined up, great. But I understand that at some point in time, this relationship, as beautiful as it is right now, is going to hit a brick wall, and most probably, the person who professed their love for me and commitment to me 5 minutes before is going to turn on me because I did something that they just didn't like. That's going to be the deal. So a person realizes this, and it happens. Then a person says, okay, you know what? I got to look out for me. I got to look out for me. Which again, by itself is not a bad thing. The challenge is that sometimes that looking out for me and complete need to have my own back over time ferments into an egocentricity and self-centeredness. So now that I'm living life realizing no one's got my back, the friends are not friends; they're acquaintances, right? The chaverim, they're not chaverim. They're wonderful, incredible people who have aligned agendas, and Amir Hashem, it'll keep going until it's not. And then I got to realize, I got to have my back. I have to watch out for myself. I have to take care of me. Good, except when it turns into a sense of self-centeredness. So then it takes a wrong turn at a certain point, where everything then becomes all about me. So suddenly, again, what began almost as like protecting myself, looking after myself, which again is a good thing, then turns into, I don't really care about anything else. I just need to focus on me. I just need to focus on me. He goes on, he says, Ani, I'm sorry. He goes on, Rak bishvili, Ani v'afsi od. Just me. That's the only thing I'm focusing on, me and me alone. Ve'afshar shegam zos asiba. This is incredible, by the way, I will say. This is such a profound piece. Ve'afshar shegam zos asiba, mashenashim v'yiladim rachmanim, heimal zulasam, yosem min ha'anashim chasaz zulasam. So yosem min ha'anashim gdolim. This is why, by the way, you'll normally find that women and children have much more empathy than men. Right? Women and children are often much more selfless than men are. This is incredible. What's the pshat with that? He says, listen to this. We'll say, this is so profound. Kevan shapi arov, yesh lahem mi shedoeg lahem. Because often women and children, hopefully, have someone whose primary job is to look out for them. Hopefully a woman has a husband. Habal ishto, which I will say, by the way, the PhD teaches us so much stuff, just even like the peripheral stuff. Do you know what the job of a husband is? The job of a husband is to make his wife feel secure. That is the job of a husband. that my wife should feel that she is secure. My wife should know that there is someone who is looking after her, that there is someone who has her back, that there is someone who would move heaven and earth, and that her happiness, her contentment in life is my primary objective. That is the job of a husband. So a wife hopefully has someone who she knows is looking after her, right? And children hopefully also know if someone is looking after them. Who's looking after the children? Right? The parent. So it's interesting. It's so much easier to have empathy for other people when what? When you know that you're looked after. So if I know how good it feels to be looked after and cared for by someone else, it is so much easier for me to pass that along. But the challenge, says the Rebbe specifically for men, is that very often in our role, we don't necessarily have someone who looks after us in that same way. And so because of that, and especially after all of life's different betrayals, we say to ourselves, okay, I gotta look after me. Especially if I have to look after everybody else, I certainly have to look after me as well. And therefore, over time, what ends up happening is that looking after myself ultimately morphs into this anochius, into this self-centeredness. He goes on, he says, "V'lo ra'a nafsham od es atzmu legamuda ba'olam. Lachein lo ischazka kol kach ba'anochius." So therefore, again, the Rebbe says, women and children, you don't find that selfishness and egocentricity as much. Again, this obviously is a very broad statement. It's also made in the 1920s in Piaget's Poland. So I don't know, okay, somebody could commission a sociological study about these things these days. I don't know what's different in 2025. But the yesod is profound. The yesod is profound, which is at the end of the day, women and children have a much easier time with empathy because they know the feeling of being looked after and cared for. Hopefully children have parents whose primary job is to love them, make them feel secure, not give them everything. Right? Ultimately, again, a wife has a husband who recognizes that his primary job is to look after her, make her feel secure. Therefore, because they have that, it is much easier for them to be able to give it to others as well. Therefore, again, women and children often are able to be better friends. They're able to be more empathic friends. Because since they receive the love and support of someone and they feel secure because someone else has their back, they're able to pay that forward. Shabbos say we're gonna have to stop over here for a time. I'm leaving you a little bit on a cliffhanger. Shabbos say, but I just want to point out so again, obviously the $1 million is great. So what do we have? So we have over here. What we have over here, number one, I will say, is a fundamental idea from the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, that the greatest obstacle to spiritual development is egocentricity. Egocentricity, self-centeredness, selfishness. But what is the genesis of that? Where does that come from? So I think the Rebbe gives us a powerful yesod. Where does it come from? It comes from a feeling, I will say, you want to get down to the core of it? Comes from a feeling of not feeling cared for. I don't feel that anyone cares about me. I don't feel that anyone loves me. I don't feel that anyone has my back. Okay, so I'm a big boy. I'm not going to sit in the corner, go into the fetal position and rock back and forth and cry about it. But instead, what I am going to do is, I'm going to say, okay, no one's got my back. And again, I will say, you couple this with all of the letdowns we have in life about people. Again, we thought we were friends, we thought we were this, we thought we were that, and then no, we only aligned agendas, all the stuff we spoke about before. And then it leads me to one real thing, which is, I'm in this alone. I'm really in this alone. And as such, I have to have my back. Which again, ultimately over time, leads to this unhealthy sense of egocentricity, selfishness, and self-centeredness. So how do you come out of it? So I'll just give you one line, then we're going to stop. Last line. So the Rebbe says, the only way to do it is to surround yourself ultimately again with the love of good friends. Again, we'll talk about this more in our next year, but the Rebbe is going to say it's interesting. The one thing you need to do in order to go ahead and bring yourself out of egocentricity is put yourself in a friend circle. Put yourself in a chevra where you could be surrounded by people who will love you unconditionally. Where you could be surrounded by people who are not only going to like you and love you when you do what they want, but the moment you make them unhappy, they're out. Find for yourself, and I will say, by the way, it's not a big chevra, but if you can find a small group of people to foster a healthy and loving and meaningful relationship where I could really feel that there are people who genuinely care about me, genuinely want the best for me, genuinely have my back, that'll slowly but surely draw me out of the clutches of self-centeredness, selfishness, egocentricity, and will restore a healthy sense of self. Will remove the anochi, remove the blockade between myself and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But again, more about that, details about that, the Meretz Yishmer, our next year, Ma'ariv in the base Medrash, Rabbosai, Shkoyach.
I'm going to stop tomorrow.